All right, we're going to try and keep this pretty short this time as we are kind of closing out this book. I just want to show you a couple quotes that I think are really important or powerful. On page 185, some of Denver's last words to Deborah were really quite lovely. He says, "I can understand how important it is to you that we keep on reaching out to the homeless. Now you done did all you could do, and God has put it on my heart to tell you that if you lay down the torch, I'll pick it up and keep your ministry to the homeless going." And so this is while Deborah is on her deathbed, and we know ultimately that she does not make it through this book. But it's important that Denver says, hey, look, your legacy is protected. Your legacy of loving others, your legacy of sharing God's love with others is protected. I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to keep going because she had made such an impact on his life. So I thought that was kind of really important because, again, a lot of this has to do with like a legacy of love, this whole book. There it is, Deborah's legacy of love, seeing the best. And I think that part of why Denver feels it's so important to take up the torch that Deborah's leaving behind is because what he says on page 193, and this is when he was struggling and wrestling with God. This is after she had died. He was kind of visiting her grave. He says, "You was the onlyest person that looked past my skin and past my meanness and saw that there was somebody on the inside worth saving. I don't know how, but you knowed that most of the time when I acted like a bad fella, it was just so folks wouldn't get too close. I didn't want nobody close to me. Wasn't worth the trouble. Besides that, I had done lost enough people in my life and I didn't want to lose nobody else." And so again, this is part of Deborah's legacy as well, not just wanting to demonstrate God's love to others, but also seeing them for what's beneath the surface and kind of what they can be rather than what is actually happening at that moment. And we know that Deborah definitely saw past Denver's rough exterior, and I think he knows that and he appreciates that. He also says to her, and just in general, he says, every man should have the courage to stand up and face the enemy, because every person that looks like an enemy on the outside ain't necessarily one on the inside. We all has more in common than we think. You stood up with courage and faced me when I was dangerous, and it changed my life. You loved me for who I was on the inside, the person God meant for me to be, the one that had just gotten lost for a while on some ugly roads in life. Okay, and again, Deborah saw past everything that Denver was doing and saying, and kind of that really, really rough exterior. And I love the part where it says, the person God meant for me to be. That's who you saw me as. That she kind of had this capacity for infinite hope, like the way that Nick describes Gatsby, right? There's this infinite hope for people that she sees what they are supposed to be rather than who they are currently. All right, and we're all works in progress, and so Deborah just kind of sees the end product before the work. Okay. On pages 210 and 211, Ron talks about how he was afraid that after Deborah died, that Denver would think that he had caught and released him as a friend. And Denver did think that for a little bit. Then he had kind of a vision of Deborah saying, "No, this is your home." And Ron reassures him. He says, "Denver, of course you're welcome here. You're welcome here even when I'm not here. The kids and I consider you part of our family now, and our home is your home. When I promised not to catch and release, I meant it forever." And I think that just goes to show like the depth of their relationship and the power of their relationship, that Ron was deeply impacted by his relationship with Denver, to the point where he has developed some depth and some and he's grown. He's grown. Some more growth occurs too when they decide to go on kind of a trip to see Red River Parish, Louisiana, and kind of where Denver grew up. On page 228, Ron has kind of a moment of awakening. Okay, he realizes something. He says, "We left just before dark, and as we drove away, the images of poverty and squalor burned themselves into my brain like hated tattoos. I could hardly believe places like that still existed in America. I thanked Denver for taking me there, for taking my blinders off." And I think most of us, and certainly a lot of people, even in the 1960s, like Ron lived through the 1960s as well, I think most people weren't even fully aware of the modern day slavery that was going on. And so I think it was important for Ron to see that, for Ron to see that even, in the 90s when they were visiting again, that, oh my goodness, people are still living in really, really awful situations. And so I think it's important for us to sometimes face the facts and see the tragedy in the world, so that we can kind of grow as people. And I think it's important too that one reason why Denver and Ron were able to become friends is because there became a kind of a mutual understanding, right? That they tried to understand one another. And I think in doing so, they both grew quite a bit. Ron in particular, though. Whoops. So Denver's legacy, we talked about Deborah's, okay? I love on page 231 when he was asked to speak in a church. He's like, what am I supposed to say? And then he ultimately says this, just tell them I'm a nobody that's trying to tell everybody about somebody that can save anybody. And so I just think that was a really powerful way to describe that, because that's ultimately what we all are, right? We are nobodies who should be telling everybody about somebody, Jesus, who can save anybody. And so I love that phrasing, that line. It's really well written, or it's really well spoken. Some more of Denver's wisdom there. But I love that his legacy is deeply rooted in the gospel. It's deeply rooted in wanting to share the gospel with other people. And then we can't end this book without taking a look at Denver's closing remarks. So on the very, very last page, he said, I worried that I was so different from them that we were never going to have no kind of future. But I found out everybody's different, the same kind of different as me. Okay, I love that because we are all different. There's massive amounts of diversity within the human population, and yet we are all united. And here's how he says that. He says, we're all just regular folks walking down the road God done set in front of us. The truth about it is, whether we is rich or poor or something in between, this earth ain't no final resting place. So in a way, we is all homeless, just working our way toward home. That's a really, really beautiful way to think of it. And I know that most Christians have heard that, right? That this is not our home, and that ultimately we're working towards heaven. I just think it's so appropriate for this book that he says, no, we're all homeless, which unites then us, those of us that are not physically homeless here on earth. That unites us with a population of people that often get overlooked, and with a population of people that that often get looked down upon, right? That unites us. We're all kind of on the same level ultimately, and we are all just working our way toward home. So I just really liked the way that this book ends. And I'm going to stop there because I think this book kind of speaks for itself.